The clock glowed 3:17 a.m. when a piercing alarm tore through the stillness of my bedroom, a sound so sharp it felt like it could slice through steel. Tires screeched outside, a chaotic symphony of rubber on asphalt, and blue-red lights danced across my walls like a fever dream. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled to the window, curtains yanked aside, eyes squinting into the night. What I saw wasn't just a disruption, it was a full-blown assault on reality. Armed officers, clad in tactical gear, moved like shadows with deadly precision, their radios crackling with barked commands. The street was a war zone, a Hollywood raid come to life. But that wasn't the part that stopped my breath. My Jeep, my rugged, black, military-grade Jeep, parked exactly where the local police task force had instructed, locked tighter than a bank vault, was gone. Vanished. In its place, a single, mocking orange parking cone stood like a middle finger to reason, a sticky note flapping in the breeze. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the glass, and read the words scrawled in Sharpie, asterisk, code violation. HOA confiscated. Asterisk. For a moment, I stood frozen, caught between wanting to scream, cry, or laugh at the sheer absurdity of it. Karen Farthington, the HOA president, known to the neighborhood as Karen Supreme, had just cut the lock off a law enforcement vehicle and towed it like it was a rusted bicycle left on her lawn. She had no idea she'd just obliterated a months-long federal surveillance operation. And now, with agents pounding on my door, their voices tight with urgency, demanding to know where the Jeep was, I realized I was about to face the most surreal moment of my life, explaining to the federal government that my Jeep had been stolen by a suburban dictator with a clipboard and a vendetta. Moving to Willow Creek Estates was supposed to be my reset button. After years of serving overseas, bouncing from one chaotic city to another, I craved roots. A quiet street. A backyard where my dog, Rusty, could chase squirrels. A garage big enough to tinker with motorcycles until midnight. For the first few weeks, it was paradise. Neighbors waved from porches, their smiles warm as fresh coffee. Kids raced bikes in the cul-de-sac, their laughter echoing through the evening air. The scent of charcoal grills and fresh mulch hung heavy, a promise of the good life. I'd found my haven. Then I met Linda Farthington. Karen Supreme. She wasn't just the HOA president, she was the embodiment of every petty rule ever written. Grass half an inch too tall. A fine appeared on your doorstep by dawn. Halloween lights lingering past October 31st. Expect a written warning, typed in Comic Sans for extra menace. And if you dared park a rugged Jeep with blackout plating and reinforced bumpers, like mine, you were practically begging for her wrath. The first time Karen laid eyes on my Jeep, her lips pursed so tightly they vanished into a thin, judgmental line. "That thing doesn't belong in this neighborhood," she spat, eyeing it like it had just keyed her Prius. "It looks like it crawled out of a junkyard." I kept my cool, explaining that the Jeep was part of my consulting work with local law enforcement. Her scoff could have curdled milk. "Nice story, soldier boy. Try a Honda like a normal person." From that moment, she declared war. Every week, a new letter arrived, each more unhinged than the last, asterisk, unauthorized vehicle modifications. Excessive tactical aesthetics. Asterisk, my favorite. Asterisk, parking intimidation. Asterisk, apparently, my Jeep's mere existence was waging psychological warfare on her manicured utopia. I'd laugh if it weren't so maddening. What Karen didn't know, because she was too busy memorizing HOA bylaws to notice reality, was that my Jeep wasn't just a vehicle. It was a covert powerhouse. A task force had approached me months earlier, asking to use it as a fixed surveillance node for a sting operation targeting a drug ring that had wormed its way into our idyllic community. The Jeep was fitted with remote cameras, GPS trackers, and a digital recording unit, all hidden behind its battle-ready exterior. Its intimidating look was exactly why it worked. Suspects didn't bat an eye, assuming it was just some ex-military guy's toy. The irony? Karen's hatred made it the perfect cover. I kept my mouth shut, per the task force's orders. The fewer people who knew, the better. They gave me strict instructions: keep it parked in front of my house, rotate its angle slightly every few days to avoid suspicion, and never move it without notifying them. I went overboard, slapping a heavy-duty security lock on the front wheel, both to deter thieves and to scream, asterisk, this isn't abandoned. Asterisk. Karen didn't care. That lock was like a red cape to her bull. She reported the Jeep 5 times, each complaint more deranged, escalating it to abandoned vehicle status despite my protests. I showed her the registration, pointed out it was on my property, legally parked. She just smiled that smug, saccharine smile and say, I have the right to deal with neighborhood hazards. Then she crossed the line. One afternoon, while I was out grabbing groceries, Karen snapped. She hired a sketchy tow service, probably some guy she found on Craigslist who didn't ask questions. But first, she marched to the Jeep, bolt cutters gleaming in her manicured hands, and sliced through the lock like she was starring in her own action movie. My neighbor Rick, a porch-dwelling retiree whose Ring camera never slept, caught it all. In the footage, Karen smirks at the camera, victorious, and says, one less eyesore to worry about. By the time I got home, the Jeep was gone. I thought it was stolen until I saw the cone and that infuriating note. I stormed to Karen's house, pounding on her door, but she wouldn't answer. Instead, she fired off an email, cold and formal, asterisk, the HOA has relocated the non-compliant vehicle to prevent visual pollution and ensure community standards. Asterisk. I laughed until I remembered what was inside the Jeep. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a towed car. This was a federal disaster. I called the task force. They didn't laugh. Within 30 minutes, Officer Melendez and his team were at my door, their faces a mix of fury and disbelief. I showed them Rick's footage, and Melendez's jaw tightened so hard I thought his teeth might crack. She cut the lock and towed it without authorization? He asked, voice low and dangerous. I nodded, sweat beading on my neck. We're talking tampering with federal surveillance equipment, he said. Obstruction at minimum. The mood turned nuclear. They issued an emergency retrieval order, but the Jeep wasn't at any local tow lot. Karen had stashed it somewhere off-grid, likely illegal. Worse, the sting operation it was monitoring. Dead. The suspects, spooked by the sudden police presence, had vanished. A months-long operation, countless hours, and millions in resources, torched by an HOA busybody who thought my Jeep was too tactical for her cul-de-sac. Standing on my porch at 3:17 a.m., watching agents swarm the street without their surveillance hub, I felt the weight of it all. Karen had no idea what she'd unleashed. But when the law caught up to her, she'd wish she'd stuck to fining people for unapproved mailboxes. The next morning, a text from Melendez hit my phone like a grenade, asterisk, we found the Jeep. You're going to want to see this. Asterisk. My stomach churned. I threw on a hoodie and met him outside, where he waited in an unmarked black SUV, his jaw clenched like he was chewing nails. He didn't speak the entire drive, which only made the knot in my gut tighten. 10 minutes later, we pulled up to a rusted gate behind an HOA maintenance shed I'd never noticed, hidden like a dirty secret. Melendez pointed to the open padlock dangling on the gate, a careless afterthought. Inside was a fenced-off lot, a graveyard of weeds, tarps, and forgotten junk. 3 other cars sat abandoned, their parking stickers peeled, tickets fluttering like ghosts. And there was my Jeep, scratched, filthy, dumped at an angle like a discarded toy. The driver's side mirror hung cracked, and the black case housing the encrypted surveillance drive gaped open, gutted. I stood there, speechless, while Melendez swore under his breath and snapped photos. This isn't a tow lot, he muttered, kicking a cone. This is her private impound empire. I circled the Jeep, each scratch a fresh stab of anger. Scuff marks marred the wheel wells, mud clogged the suspension, and the glove box bore screwdriver scars from a botched break-in. It was desecration. Melendez called for backup and a federal evidence team, his voice clipped with rage. Then, as if summoned by our fury, Karen appeared. She clip-clopped through the gravel in heels, a cheerful smile plastered on her face like she was hosting a bake sale. "Oh, good, you found it," she chirped, as if we'd misplaced a sweater. "I was about to notify you, but I assumed you knew the HOA was within its rights." "Ma'am, step away from the vehicle," Melendez cut in, his tone pure steel. Karen blinked, her smile faltering. "Excuse me. I'm the HOA president. I have full authority." "You removed federal surveillance property from an active operation," Melendez snapped. "Do you understand how serious that is?" Her face twisted, a mix of smugness and disbelief. "You can't be serious. That thing was a nuisance. I thought it was abandoned. It had a lock and sat there for a week. Honestly, I did you a favor." I couldn't believe her gall. She expected gratitude for destroying government property. Melendez signaled an officer to escort her away as the evidence team swarmed the jeep. Karen didn't go quietly, her voice rising, proclaiming she'd saved the neighborhood and done what no one else had the guts to do. Every word was a shovel, digging her deeper. I showed Melendez Rick's ring footage on my phone. Karen, in broad daylight, slicing the lock like a thief, laughing as an unmarked tow truck hauled the jeep away. That laugh was her undoing. By day's end, the task force had everything: video evidence, a timeline, and an illegal tow yard run under the guise of HOA enforcement. Then Rick strolled up, lawn chair in one hand, cooler in the other, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "So," he said, popping a soda, "you telling her she messed with the feds, or should I post it on Facebook first?" Rick had been chronicling Karen's reign of terror for years. Her letters, her rants at HOA meetings, her Facebook brags about cleaning the streets. He had screenshots, clips, a digital dossier of her tyranny, and he handed it over like a proud curator. "Knew she'd implode," he said. "Didn't think she'd do it by stealing a government jeep." The HOA was clueless. Karen had acted alone, no board vote, no paperwork, just rogue spite. When word spread, neighbors reacted with disbelief, then celebration. One woman baked cupcakes with blue-red frosting, shaped like tow trucks. That night, Detective Sasha Lynn called, her voice sharp. "We're evaluating charges, tampering, obstruction, maybe more. Her HOA title won't shield her." She paused. "Prepare for fallout. People like her don't go quietly." She was right. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting, not to apologize, but to double down, claiming she'd been misled by federal overreach. The audacity was staggering. But the walls were closing in, and at that meeting, she wouldn't hold the gavel. She'd be in the crosshairs. The community center was a powder keg by Friday evening. Every chair was filled, neighbors spilling into the aisles, their whispers electric with anticipation. Reporters jostled for space, cameras flashing, while legal observers and men in dark suits, definitely not here for cookies, stood stone-faced along the walls. The air crackled as we waited for Karen Farthington, suburban tyrant, to face her reckoning. She arrived 15 minutes late, strutting in a red blazer like a game show host, clipboard clutched like a shield. Her smug smile faltered only slightly as she tapped the microphone, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Thank you for coming," she began, voice dripping with false warmth. "I want to address the recent misunderstanding about the removal of an illegally parked vehicle. There's been confusion, misinformation, and frankly, hysteria." A snort from the back. "Rick, no doubt." Karen pressed on. "As your HOA president, I prioritize safety and aesthetics. That abandoned Jeep, chained and unmoved, was a hazard. I followed procedure. I had no knowledge of covert operations or government ownership. Frankly, I was misled. I couldn't take it. Misled. I stood, voice booming. You cut the lock off a federal vehicle, towed it without authorization, and bragged about it on Facebook. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen's glare could have melted steel, but I wasn't done. I marched to the front, handed a USB drive to the IT guy, and the projector hummed to life. The Ring footage played first, Karen, bolt cutters in hand, slicing the lock, smirking as the tow truck dragged the Jeep away. Then, Facebook screenshots, her gloating posts, her military cosplay jabs, her proud declaration, asterisk, sometimes you have to break the rules to keep the streets clean. Asterisk, the room fell silent, the weight of her arrogance crushing. Board member Greg, usually cowed by Karen, whispered to his neighbor, his face pale. Karen's composure cracked, her voice tight. Perhaps I was misinformed, but the bylaws give me authority. No, they don't, Detective Sasha Lynn interjected, stepping forward with a thick folder. We've reviewed your charter. You bypassed the board, used an unlicensed tow company, and hid the vehicle in an unauthorized lot. You've been operating without consent. Karen's mouth opened, but Sasha wasn't done. That vehicle was part of a joint task force operation. Your actions compromised months of surveillance, damaged equipment, and ended an active case. Gasps filled the room. Karen turned to the board, but they leaned away, abandoning her. Greg stood, voice shaky. I moved to suspend Linda Farthington as HOA president pending investigation. Another member seconded. The vote was unanimous. Karen's jaw dropped, her world collapsing. You can't do this, she shrieked. I built this HOA. And destroyed it in one afternoon, I said, standing beside Sasha. Karen waved a letter, claiming it was a cease and desist against me and the police for entrapment. Sasha glanced at it, unimpressed. Your lawyer, Trent Maxwell. He's under investigation. Good luck. Karen was alone. Her allies, the ones who cheered her mailbox crusades, sat silent. She stormed out, barking, "You haven't heard the last of this." The room erupted in applause, a spontaneous ovation for her downfall. Sasha leaned in. The DA's getting the file. She's not walking away clean. Greg approached later, apologetic. She threatened to fine me for a flag once, he admitted. I told him fear was her weapon, and now it was gone. That night, I slept soundly, no sirens, no HOA emails. But Karen wasn't done. She'd fight, because fading quietly wasn't in her DNA. Within 48 hours, the story exploded. Rick posted the Ring footage to Reddit's r/EntitledPeople, captioned, asterisk, HOA Karen cuts lock to tow neighbor's Jeep. Didn't know it was federal. Asterisk, it hit the front page in hours, racking up millions of views. TikTokers reenacted Karen's smirk, YouTube ran montages, and Twitter dubbed her Suburbia's tyrant. News vans invaded Willow Creek, and tourists snapped selfies with my scratched-up Jeep, now a local legend. A parody GoFundMe, Save the Tactical Jeep, raised enough for a matte black paint job. I obliged. But the humor masked real damage. The surveillance gear was destroyed, the task force's work derailed. Karen, undeterred, held a press conference outside the courthouse, her sleazy lawyer Trent Maxwell at her side. He claimed she was the victim, that I'd baited her by parking legally. The news anchor laughed on air. The DA wasn't amused, filing charges, unauthorized towing, property destruction, obstruction, tampering. The Fed sent a scathing letter, and the HOA board, desperate to avoid lawsuits, apologized and dissolved Karen's violation committee. Neighbors cheered in the streets. Karen's countersuit, against me, the police, the HOA, claimed I'd lured her into crime by securing my Jeep. The judge tossed it out, barely hiding his smirk. Online, Karen became a meme, photoshopped into Grand Theft Auto, her press conference remixed into a rap, I didn't know it was federal. Teens called their strict parents Farthingtons. The neighborhood healed. Porches filled with laughter, flags flew, kids drew chalk art without fines. Rick launched HOWatchdog.net, a resource for HOA victims, complete with Jeep merch. The task force replaced my Jeep's gear and gifted me an upgraded model. I laughed, imagining Karen's face when she saw it. Then came the audit. Karen had misused thousands in HOA funds, towing fees, contractors, even printer ink, buried in shady expense reports. Embezzlement charges loomed. Greg handed me the report, exhausted but hopeful. The state's coming. The HOA might dissolve. I asked what had happened without it. Maybe we're just neighbors, he said. It hit hard. One night, I parked the new Jeep, a custom tag reading #1eyesore under the bumper. Kids on bikes gave thumbs-ups. Karen's house went dark, she was selling, but no one wanted the tyrant's lair. Justice came not just in charges but in memes, community, and a stubborn Jeep. The end came on a warm Saturday morning, the air thick with calm before the storm. I sipped coffee on my porch, chuckling at a new Karen meme, when 3 black SUVs and a sedan rolled up. Marshall stepped out, knocking once on Karen's door. No answer. A locksmith opened it, and minutes later, she emerged, hair messy, red blazer wrinkled, clutching a useless folder. Handcuffed, she walked to the vehicle, her face not angry, but stunned, as if she still believed this was a mistake. Neighbors watched, some with popcorn, others cheering as the SUVs drove off. Rick set off fireworks. Sasha Lynn stopped by, listing charges: obstruction, tampering, illegal towing, embezzlement. The HOA collapsed, its bylaws shredded. People planted wildflowers, painted mailboxes neon. A metal sign, reserved for tactical eyesore, marked my curb, a local landmark. The task force bought Karen's impound lot and gifted it to me. I turned it into the garage, a community hub for repairs and projects, no rules attached. To celebrate, we held a Jeep parade, veterans, officers, kids waving flags. My new Jeep LED, community watchdog, stenciled on the hood. Sasha handed me a plaque, asterisk, for keeping your cool when your HOA went full villain. Asterisk. Karen took a plea, no jail, but fines, restitution, and a 20-year HOA ban. She sold her house and vanished. The neighborhood, now eyesore estates, thrived, barbecues, tree plantings, freedom. The Jeep, still parked front and center, wasn't just a vehicle. It was a symbol of what happens when petty power meets unyielding truth. And every time I fire it up, I smile, knowing Karen's legacy is a cautionary tale, told in memes and a damn good story.